Roberto? I feel stupid that we have to walk up here. That's all.
Need him to stay on the mic. Like one whisper. It's live.
We'll arrange ourselves.
Please stand for the playing of the national anthem. And gentlemen, remove your caps. Class of 1997, please be seated.
Mr. Angelo Taranto, Chairperson of the School Committee, Mrs. Denise Temple, President, PTO, Ms. Karen Guregian, today's speaker, Dr. Richard Moser, Superintendent, Dr. Karen Maza, Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Robert Cruikshank, Business Manager, Mr. Bernard Donatali, Director of Technology, Deans Bernard Battle, Jeffrey Doherty, Alan Thomas, class advisors Joyce Bickel and George Pollard, esteemed members of our faculty, all distinguished guests, and most deservingly proud parents, grandparents, family, and friends, I welcome you to our commencement ceremony for the Chelmsford High School class of 1997. I stand before you with very mixed emotions. While I am so proud of each student of the graduating class of 1997, I truly do not want to continue with this ceremony. For it is not only a recognition of their academic achievements, but also the acknowledgement of their metamorphosis from our high school students to a new stage of their growth as Chelmsford High School alumni. From a group of very young and uncertain students who transitioned from McCarthy Middle School, they have grown and become one of the most respectful and respected classes of Chelmsford High School. While initially as a class, they struggled to get organized to compete in Spirit Week and for class functions, by their junior year, they became more organized, and this year, not only were they victorious in Spirit Week, but they were the first class to have a sleepover the night before our pep rally, and to my delight, they even convinced me to join them. Their demeanor during class events and during each school day has been marked with spontaneous politeness, sincere cooperation, and an always positive enthusiasm. With these unique qualities, they have gained the admiration and friendship of our entire staff and the dedicated efforts and support of the entire town of Chelmsford. This support is signaled today by the presence of past high school administration, Mr. George Simonian, Mr. Donald Boucher, Mr. Ed Quinn, and local government officials, State Senator Susan Fargo and Representative Carol Clevin, Selectmen Susan Gates, William Dalton, Robert Lawler, Philip Eliopoulos, and Stuart Weisfeld, along with our school committee members Angelo Taranto, Judy Millette, Wendy Marks, and Mary France. The class of 1997 has grown together under their dedicated, creative, and always humorous advisors, Mrs. Joyce Bickel and Mr. George Pollard. This group of young people has been motivated and skillfully led by their president, David Anderson, their vice president, Louis DiStasi, their treasurer, Jennifer Hardy, and their secretary, Carolyn Bleck. Under their leadership, the Doughboy, barbecue grills, karaoke, Spirit Week, the talent show, class dances have all taken on a new meaning to Chelmsford High School. The class of 1997 is to be commended for a key role this year in our school's calculus team being nationally ranked, in our school newspaper receiving a second-place ranking, and in putting our mock trial team into the semifinals. This is the class who had the most number of students recognized as merit finalists and merit scholars. This is the class that won recognition for our writing program from the National Council of Teachers of English, as well as prestigious awards for JETS competition and Odyssey of the Mind. This is the class that excelled athletically, who helped earn our hockey team an invitation to the Elite 8 hockey tournament at the Fleet Center, who helped our girls or boys teams participate in state tournaments in basketball, field hockey, wrestling, cross country, track, softball, swimming, volleyball, and baseball. And more importantly, this class of athletes always showed character both in victory and in defeat. This is also the class that experienced the passing away of two beloved faculty members, and it is this class of young graduates who stepped forward to maturely and sensitively support the entire staff in facing such difficult deaths. This is a class of young people, many of whom I personally have known since preschool, one member since birth, and many through youth soccer and basketball, through Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, through puppet workshops, way before they entered a classroom at Chelmsford High School. This is a class I consider not only my students, but also my very special friends. The class of 1997 has demonstrated much academic and athletic talents and wonderful people skills. You are a class with much class, a group of young people with whom I feel blessed to have spent at least 4 years of your lives. I hope you will continue to discover your talents and use your strengths to continue to achieve true success and happiness. On behalf of the faculty, staff, and the entire town of Chelmsford, I thank you for making Chelmsford High School so special by your presence. Personally, to the class of 1997, a class I really will miss, I'm going to refuse to say goodbye, but rather, I hope to see you sometime soon and very often. For friends, never forget to visit friends. Thank you. To introduce our salutatorian for the class of 1997, I call to the stage a young man from the class of 1997 who is not only a friend of our salutatorian, but also one who has distinguished himself recently by successfully climbing Mount Rainier. I am pleased to introduce to you Jeffrey Needles.
Good evening. I was going to say it's a nice night, but it's not. It's all right, as long as it doesn't rain. Now, you know this must be a really important occasion because Mr. Battle's still here, and it's way past his bedtime. Now, I've been asked to introduce this evening the salutatorian of the class of 1997, a close friend and compatriot in our struggle against the oppression of the men. Oh, wait, sorry. Wait, wrong speech. Here we go. All right. He's a man of many qualities, a true scholar in the Latin sense, and someone that I'm proud to know. Now, who is Arjun Masurkar, you all ask yourselves? First and foremost, he is a penultimate scholar. He is curious and probing, questioning and exploring, and he has an undying passion for science. In class, he is quite literally a one-man angry mob of humor. He always offers a funny sidebar to help burn through the humdrum of the day. On his free periods, he changes into lab boy, preparer of solutions and defender of molarity. When assisting in the science prep room, he is entrusted with tasks that require the utmost responsibility and the most detailed attention. This is the Arjun of Chelmsford High School. But once the school day is over and the sun goes down, he doesn't stop. In the evenings, he works as a research assistant at UMass Lowell for Dr. Edwin Youngden doing high-end genetic research. As I said before, I believe Arjun is truly a scholar in the Latin sense. So as I was thinking about Arjun the other day, trying to prepare for this speech, I asked myself, if Arjun had lived in Roman times, what would he have said to his fellow scholars while walking with them through the forum? The Romans had many poignant phrases that would have been applicable in everyday Arjun settings. And so I want to leave you with a couple phrases that I believe represent Arjun's unique humor, intellect, and personality. And that also happen to sound really cool in Latin. For instance, there's the ever-useful phrase, Teo dire non possum, musa sapientum fixa est in aura, which Arjun might have used to fend off Mr. Mosto's probing physics problems, and which means in English, I can't hear you. I have a banana in my ear. And I'm struck by the bizarre audacity of Arjun's possible Latin response to Mr. Hazard's literary analysis of the novel Animal Farm. He might offer, opinor vere meleagridem gallopo vonam nobis seipis addendum esse, which loosely translates to be, you know, we really ought to have turkey more often. Well, we are not in Roman times, and Arjun doesn't even read Latin, so I'll stop now. But as a final note, though, I wanted to point out that this is probably not the last time we'll be hearing from Arjun. For in the future, as an undergrad of MIT, I have no doubt that he will be making an appearance in MIT's annual Stud Muffins of Science calendar. After all, Arjun is the original Stud Muffin of Science. And so I introduce to you our salutatorian and my comrade in arms, Arjun Masurkar.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for those wonderful comments. I'm not used to hearing my own voice at such a loud tone, but I'll continue. I've had the great pleasure of living in this town all my life and attending its public schools for 13 years. I've been impressed not only by the system's standards, but by its realizations of its own faults and its attempts at correcting them. And so we, the class of 97, wait patiently for our diplomas as products of this dynamic process. It was interesting to see myself and fellow classmates being passed on from grade to grade, with each teacher adding some of his or her wisdom to our burgeoning minds in a miraculous educational continuum. Hopefully, some of that knowledge is stuck with us. And even if we can't remember all of Newton's laws, each algebraic formula, or every character from Macbeth, we can at least stand here with a distinct attitude, a positive mindset, developed through years of honest hard work to deal with our futures. We've all heard about the intimidating world, the real world, that awaits us in adulthood. It is no doubt frightening, and no one has ever entered into it without qualms. There will always be questions, and there will always be failures in our lives. The one thing we can maintain is our attitude. More and more of our generation are giving in to fear and are running away from responsibility, leading to negative labeling from our elders. Our peers are not necessarily unintelligent, but they do severely lack spirit. In a stage of our lives often filled with indecision, fear, or confusion about the future, we can only rely on our attitude to see that this is one of the only times in our lives that we can really start over. Chances like these are rare. So now we can take our past faults and correct them, discover our strengths, and improve upon them. I often dream that someday I can open a newspaper, read a magazine, or watch TV, and recognize the name of one of my former classmates who has accomplished great things in his or her career. However, wishes like that are somewhat naive. Realistically, most of us will probably not reach such celebrity status. But who is to say that fame is a measure of success? With a positive attitude, we must continue to strive in whatever profession we choose, to become experts and leaders in whatever field we enter. Indifference is a treacherous and dangerous feeling. So let us steer clear of a mindset like that. Don't waste each precious day regretting yesterday's failure or worrying about tomorrow's impossible task. We have confidence in your abilities and be aware of your fallbacks to maintain your daily spirit. Though I stand here at this podium in my one moment of power, I have no right to dictate how all of us feel about our experiences during high school. No series of cleverly assembled adjectives, striking phrases, or cliches nearing retirement can describe the victories and failures of these past years. And there are so many people who deserve our thanks. We should all appreciate those who encouraged us, helped us, and believed in us. But I also think that we should remember those who criticized us, failed us, punished us, pointed out our faults, and pushed us to the limits. They also molded our minds and contributed to the constructive attitude we've developed. No doubt, a lot is expected from our class. Our parents, relatives, friends, and teachers who have guided us all these years expect us to guide the society in the future. Don't take this as another responsibility on your shoulders, but as a compliment and a challenge. They trust us as they have seen us mature into respectable young adults. With a constructive attitude, we will take hold of the community with more spirit, more honor, and more pride than they did, and use our particular strengths to make society even better. So please, don't remember this day as a sad event, but as a single accomplishment in a lifetime of many successes. Thank you.
Now it is my pleasure to introduce a young man with whom I have had the pleasure of sharing a leadership role, not only for the class of 1997, but truly for our entire learning community. a man of quiet demeanor, but a mature sense of responsibility, a true gentleman, whether he is in a tuxedo or a cowboy suit. The president of the class of 1997, David Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Meidell. Mr. Meidell, will you please join me at the podium? Mr. Meidell, on behalf of the class of 1997, it gives me great pleasure to present to Chelmsford High School a new sign which will be placed out in front of the school along Richardson Road. The class of 1997 is happy to donate this gift as a token of our appreciation.
On behalf of the faculty and students of Chelmsford High School, I most appreciatively accept this gift. While I have found many humorous and complimentary signs left by the class of 1997 in recent days, this gift of a new sign at the opposite entrance to our signboard will spiff up our welcome to visitors and also will recall a group of young people who became quite a spiffy group and a welcome sight at Chelmsford High School, the class of 1997. Thank you, Dave.
Over the last week or so, I've been contemplating what exactly I wanted to say to the class of 97 on what is our last day together. I decided on two things, actually. The first part, some of you may have already seen. It's the letter that I wrote in the yearbook. When I was elected class president, I felt many emotions. I felt extremely proud to be chosen to represent such a fine class. I was excited about working with my fellow officers and representatives. And now that our days at Chelmsford High School are over, I feel sad that each of us will be going our separate ways. In writing this, I felt unsure of exactly what I wanted to say. Let me begin by thanking our class advisors, Mr. George Pollard and Mrs. Joyce Bickel. The help and wisdom of these two dedicated people have made everything that we as a class have accomplished possible. I would also like to thank my fellow class officers, Louis DiStasi, Vice President, Carolyn Bleck, Secretary, and Jennifer Hardy, Treasurer. I would also like to thank all the class representatives and people who have helped us along the way. These are a group of people whose spirit and devotion have made all our class events successful. Finally, I would like to thank Mr. Meidell, Mr. Doherty, Mr. Battle, and Mr. Thomas for their unending support throughout our journey. The hard work and support of all these people have brought us 4 memorable years at Chelmsford High School. Together as a class, we've experienced many things together. From our first pep rally to our successful magazine drive, we have grown tremendously. We entered the halls of Chelmsford High School timid and unsure, and now we leave confident and mature. We learn from textbooks and teachers, but the most important lessons we have learned have been from each other. Whether on the athletic field or the stage, we've come together as a class, something I'm very proud of. This togetherness has made my high school experience a memorable one, and hopefully yours has been too. Despite the fact that our high school journey has ended, I hope you will always remember the good times and good friends you had here at Chelmsford High School. Now, the second part of what I have to say, I didn't come upon until this morning. When I got out of bed this morning, my parents had a graduation present on the kitchen table for me, and there was a card that went with it. So chances are I'm not the only one that read the message on the card. The future is yours. Strive to live to the best of your ability by those personal standards of honor and excellence which only you can set. Cherish, above all, your individuality. Realize always that you are capable of achieving the only kind of success in life that really matters, that of being at peace with yourself and with the world around you. Thank you, and good luck to everyone. I would now like to invite John Che Wen Ho, President of the Class of 1998, to join me at the podium. It is my pleasure, as president of the class of 1997, to present you with this gavel, a symbol of authority and responsibility. The class of 1997 wishes you and the class of 1998 success in all you do, and hope that you will continue to uphold the fine traditions that have been established here at Chelmsford High School.
It's really great. I'd like to accept this gavel on behalf of the class of 98 and all those people that helped me get here, namely my parents, my teachers, and my friends. I look forward to next year and to the chance of working with Miss Meidell to help make our senior year the best year ever. I want to congratulate you guys on your graduation. You guys have earned it. I know CHS is going to miss you guys, and best of luck. Thanks.
Now it is my pleasure to introduce an educational leader whose vision of learning is focused on the individual needs of each student and the collegial support of each educator in the Chelmsford school system. Through his strong commitment to serve all students and his courage to make a difference, Chelmsford High School has been able to take some dramatic moves over the past 3 years to prepare for an ever-changing global society. It is my pleasure to introduce my colleague and mentor, Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Richard Moser.
Thank you. Before introducing our guest speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to extend my personal congratulations to our graduating seniors. Graduation typically focuses on a celebration of 4 years of high school, and so it should be. You've had a wonderful 4 years. You have received an outstanding education, and you have contributed greatly to the life of our school. However, this is also a time to recognize that you are completing 13 years of public education, kindergarten through 12th grade. Along the way, you have been touched by many teachers and administrators who have a vested interest in your future. I would offer the names of only a few who might jog your memory. Mrs. Brzee and Mrs. Tolpa from the Westlands Elementary School, Mrs. Gould, Mrs. Sorley from South Row Elementary School, Mrs. Bungard, Mrs. Sederick, Mrs. Haynes from the Harrington Elementary School, Mrs. Matthews, Mrs. Combs, Mrs. Ahern from the Byam Elementary School, Mrs. Dupuy, Mrs. Stiles, Mr. Harwood from the McCarthy Middle School, and Mr. Graves from the Parker Middle School. This happens to be a list of teachers who are retiring this year, but they are symbolic of the shared commitment all of our teachers and administrators have in you and your welfare. We all wish you well, and we are certain you will find success in your next step in life, as well as in your long-range future. We invite you to come back often to visit, and we take great joy in celebrating this special day in your lives. Our guest speaker is the prime example of this message. Ms. Karen Guregian is a 1979 graduate of Chelmsford High School. While in high school, Mrs. Guregian was not only a scholar and a member of the National Honor Society, she was an outstanding athlete. She earned 9 varsity letters in field hockey, basketball, and softball. She captained each team during her senior year, and in 1991, she was inducted into the Chelmsford High School Hall of Fame. After graduation, Ms. Guregian attended Northeastern University, where she majored in journalism and graduated cum laude in 1984. During her college years, she also worked with the Lowell Sun newspaper covering events of town government, the courts, and sports. Ms. Guregian was hired by the Boston Herald in June of 1984, and for the past 13 years has written for the sports department as the Bruins beat writer and general sports columnist. Ms. Guregian has covered all major sporting events, including the World Series, the Super Bowl, the NBA playoffs, the Stanley Cup, as well as the U.S. Opens in golf and tennis. In 1982, Ms. Guregian was honored by winning the New England Press Association contest with first place in the Best News Story category. More recently, Ms. Guregian has won 3 1996 New England Press Association awards in the following categories: Sports Columnist, Sports Column, and Sports Story. Ms. Guregian was chosen by the Boston Magazine as the Outstanding Sports Reporter in its Best of Boston issue for 1992 and again in 1994. Also in 1994, she was published in Sports Illustrated with a special profile of hockey player Mario Lemieux. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Mrs. Guregian as your guest speaker. She is an outstanding role model for the youth of today. She has a wonderful story to tell about her life and her career. I present to you a 1979 graduate of Chelmsford High School, of whom we are most proud, Ms. Carolyn Guregian.
Thank you. Dr. Moser, Principal Meidell, Mr. Toronto, Mrs. Temple, members of the faculty, distinguished guests, parents, relatives, and friends of the graduates, and members of the class of 1997. It is my pleasure to be here and be a part of this memorable day with you. When I sat down and thought about what I wanted to say to you and agonized over an appropriate topic, I remembered something author John Irving once said about his craft, which by long extension happens to be my craft. He said, "A writer uses what experience he or she has. It's the translating, though, that makes the difference." Well, today, I plan on taking a page out of Irving's book. I want to share some of my experiences with you, and hopefully nothing will get lost in the translation. It doesn't seem all that long ago that I was a high school senior, sitting right where you are now. Back in 1979, I was here for my commencement, proudly dressed in white cap and gown. I was filled with all of these hopes and dreams. Some were more far-fetched than others. Mostly, I had this idea I could spend time at Fenway Park, sit in the press box beside great sports writers like Lee Montville and Bud Collins, and do something other than cheer. Yes, I wanted to be a sports writer. Like Montville, I wanted to cover the Red Sox and all the other sports teams in town. I wanted to cover a World Series, write about the Super Bowl, and of course, keep track of all of Chelmsford sports teams. I wanted to chronicle all the great sporting events we witness every year. Maybe I was naive, but I never thought pursuing this career was all that unusual. In reality, it was. It was a job few women dared attempt. It was a job women weren't really encouraged to have. But as I soon discovered, anything is possible. Never say you can't, because you can. Male, female, you can leave here today and be whatever you want to be. And I know after speaking with some of you on my visit here a few weeks ago, you also have many wonderful hopes and dreams. Don't let them die. And don't think for a minute, if you're not really good at something now, you can't be in the future. Work at it. Believe in yourself. Believe you are equal to any challenge, and then go ahead and tackle it. One of the more interesting parts of my job is that I get to hear so many stories from athletes about their beginnings, about how they made it. Most have taken the long route. Pros don't get to the big leagues just by showing up. They've had their struggles just like everyone else. Believe me, it's a rare athlete who doesn't experience a roadblock somewhere along the way. It's also a rare athlete who makes it just because he or she was born with incredible natural gifts. The Tiger Woods of the world are the exception, not the rule. But even Woods has had his own demons to conquer. Life has a different way of playing out for every individual. Some of the greatest athletes have met the same kind of rejection many of you have already experienced. I'll bet not many of you know Michael Jordan wasn't good enough for his high school basketball team. It's true. The best basketball player on the planet was cut from his high school squad. Imagine all the talent that would have gone to waste if he had stopped trying. Imagine if Jordan gave up on his dream back in high school. Never say you can't, because you can. There's a wonderful story former Bruin great and Hall of Famer Phil Esposito tells, and it's very similar to the one I mentioned about Jordan. At age 14, Esposito was cut from his youth hockey team in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Now, for a young boy in Canada, hockey is everything. It's more than just a dream. And some coach told poor Phil he wasn't good enough. That afternoon, he walked to a nearby park, sat himself down on a bench, and cried his heart out. As you might imagine, he was crushed. But all the tears in the world weren't going to change his mind. He wasn't about to quit. He would show that coach if it was the last thing he did. He was determined not to give up on his dream. Well, today, if you happen to be in Sault Ste. Marie, you'll see there's a park there named after Phil Esposito. The day it was dedicated, Esposito remembered standing to the side of the podium while all the politicians were giving their speeches. And then it hit him. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw that very same bench, the one he had shed all those tears on so many years ago. The irony certainly wasn't lost on him. In fact, it made the accomplishment that much more special. Never say you can't, because you can. Don't ever look back and regret not doing something because someone told you you couldn't. Never be afraid to at least go out and try. About 4 years ago, I was doing a story on switch hitters in baseball. For whatever reason, the Red Sox had 4 players in their starting lineup who hit from both the right side and the left side. It was relatively unheard of for one team, and especially the Red Sox, to have so many switch hitters. My boss thought it would be a good idea for me to do a piece on this phenomenon. So I went to Fenway Park to interview the Fab Four, and as luck would have it, there was a bonus, or so I thought. That night, the Red Sox were playing Cleveland, who had one of the best switch hitters of all time in their lineup in Eddie Murray. In my mind, he was second only to Mickey Mantle, the best switch hitter ever. As I stood around the batting cage waiting for the Indians to come out for their pregame hitting, a few of my colleagues, who were regular baseball beat writers, inquired who I was waiting for. When I said Murray's name, their eyes rolled. Apparently, Eddie Murray wasn't the most popular player among the media. He didn't do interviews, or so they said. He had a reputation for being a sourpuss who hated sports writers and growled at anyone who dared approach. They said he'd never talk to me. Now there's a comforting thought. Eddie Murray was the perfect person for my story, and supposedly he ate people like me for lunch. Obviously, I didn't want to incite Murray's wrath, but I also knew if I didn't at least try to talk to him, I'd be kicking myself for taking the easy way out. My boss wouldn't know, but I'd know. And besides, maybe my colleagues were wrong, or maybe they were just exaggerating about Murray's nastiness. Maybe they were just trying to scare me out of getting a good story. All I knew was that I had to at least approach him. So when he came out of the clubhouse and sat in the dugout, I took a deep breath, went over there and plopped myself right next to him. He was putting tape on his bat handle. Soon, I tapped him on the shoulder and introduced myself. I told him I was doing a story on switch hitters and it would be great to include him in the article. There was silence. He didn't even look at me. He just kept taping his bat. Silly me, I tried again, excusing myself, saying maybe he hadn't heard what I said. Finally, he turned to me and with this menacing look, spit out a few words. "Haven't you heard?" Murray grumbled. "I don't do interviews." That moment, I wished I was on Star Trek so Scotty could beam me out of there. No, this was not going well, but I couldn't run now. I had to finish what I started. So I looked back at him, stared him straight in the eye, and said, "Well, yes, Eddie, I actually did hear you weren't too fond of the press. Those gentlemen out there who are now staring at us warned me. They told me you didn't do interviews, but you know what? I had to find out for myself. What good would I be at this job if I was afraid to approach you or believed everything people told me about you? Hey, if you don't want to give me an interview, that's fine. Tell me now, and I'll be happy to leave you alone." More silence, more fiddling with his bat. The suspense was killing me. I didn't know what this guy was thinking, if anything. I was just about to the point of getting out of there when he finally turned back to me and stopped me from leaving. "Go ahead," he said, nodding his head. "Ask me whatever you want." 20 minutes later, we shook hands, and I left the dugout with a notebook full of information. I learned a valuable lesson that day and still carry it with me. It was Eleanor Roosevelt who once said, "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience which you must stop and look fear in the face. You must do the thing you think you cannot do." It's a wonderful motto to live by. Don't be afraid. Confront your fears. Never say you can't, because you can. One time, I was doing a feature on Boston Bruin hockey player Cam Neely. Sort of an up-close and personal story. At the time, Neely was a rising star here in Boston, and in the course of gathering information, I found out one of Neely's best friends was actor Michael J. Fox. Back then, Michael J. Fox was also pretty popular, but on a much larger scale. His sitcom Family Ties was huge, and his movie Back to the Future was a box office smash. Now, I had some great anecdotes about their friendship from Neely, but I knew the story really wouldn't be complete without some input from Fox. For nearly a week, maybe more, I tried to arrange an interview with him. I went through the normal channels, meaning I spoke to his agent, different publicity people at the network, and I kept getting the runaround. He's here. No, he's there. He's on vacation. He's not taking calls. He can't be bothered. Let's just say the fact Karen Guregian wanted an interview wasn't quite like having People magazine call to do a cover story. My boss kept asking me for the piece, and I kept putting him off. Finally, one Friday afternoon, he gave me an ultimatum. He wanted the story Monday for Tuesday's paper. Like it or not, that was my deadline. It's not that my boss didn't believe Fox was pivotal to the story. He did. It was more important, however, to get the story out before the competition beat us to it. And quite frankly, my boss was convinced I wasn't going to get Fox for an interview. I can still hear his words. "I'm giving you the weekend, but if you haven't talked to him by now, I don't think you ever will." I knew he was probably right, but I hated the fact that he had given up on me. That just made me more determined than ever. With those 48 hours, I was going to turn over every stone to find Michael J. Fox and talk to him. He could be in some remote location in Belize, camping in a tent, holed up somewhere in the jungle with no cell phone. It didn't matter. I was going to find him. By Sunday, I had actually tracked him down. Thankfully, he wasn't in Belize. He was in another jungle of sorts, New York City, where he was doing a movie. He was staying in a big fancy hotel under an assumed name. With Neely's help, I found out what that name was and arranged to be his wake-up call at 7 a.m. Monday morning. Sure enough, he answered the phone, and at long last, I had my interview. I was so excited, I couldn't wait to tell my boss. I counted down the minutes till the time he was due into work. You might say I wanted to rub it in a little. Finally, I got my chance. My first words to him were, "Guess who I just talked to?" Without hesitation, he gave an answer, Michael J. Fox. Talk about bursting my bubble. I asked him how he knew, and why didn't he sound the least bit surprised? He said, "That's because I'm not surprised. I knew if I told you you couldn't, you would." Naturally, things don't always work out like that. Every story doesn't always have a happy ending or the perfect ending. I'm not always able to track down the Michael J. Foxes of the world, and people like Eddie Murray don't always talk to me. The point is, you'll never know what you're truly capable of unless you try. You'll never give yourself a chance unless you truly believe there is a chance. Don't let a bad set of odds do you in. Hey, if you believe in odds, I shouldn't be here today as your commencement speaker. By most odds, I shouldn't be here at all. When I was diagnosed with cancer in 1989 and relapsed soon after a year's worth of treatment, doctors didn't give me much hope that I'd be around to see my 35th birthday. I was 30 years old and had the most advanced stage of Hodgkin's disease, which is a form of lymphoma. But somehow, I survived the disease, chemotherapy, radiation, and a bone marrow transplant. I'm 36 now, and just celebrated my 6th year in remission. I survived when the odds said I most likely wouldn't. My oncologist calls me her miracle patient. Maybe it was a miracle, but I also feel that it was important to believe that I would beat the disease. I don't think I would have had much of a chance if I had taken all those dire percentages to heart. I wouldn't have made it this far if I didn't battle this demon with the same resolve, the same determination I have used to succeed in life. Always give yourself a chance. Never say you can't, because you can. Lastly, before I close, I think it's important, especially now, as you head off to college or someplace other than school, to acknowledge some of the people who have helped bring you this far, as we've heard from some people so far. You may think you appreciate the wonderful education you received here at Chelmsford, but as I told some of you when I met you a few weeks ago, you really won't find out how good that education was until somewhere down the road. I found out almost immediately about the education part my first year at Northeastern. I was taking a basic grammar course for journalists. In a classroom of more than 100 promising writers, I was one of the few who could pick out a noun and a verb in a sentence. I'm not kidding, it's true. I knew then, being from Chelmsford put me ahead of the game. As for your teachers, you also won't find out how important someone's lecture was or how significant someone's advice was until you look back. Whether it's some teacher or some coach who may have helped turn the light switch on, someone who may have helped you think that maybe you could do something or be something, let them know in your own way how important they've been. I'll bet plenty of you out there have teachers you're fond of, teachers who've made a difference. I have people like that in my life. Aside from my parents and 2 brothers, who have always been incredibly supportive, I was lucky to have several teachers who really inspired me. The first was Susan Dowd, my 8th grade English teacher. She didn't flunk me when I did my class project on violence in hockey. Instead, she opened my eyes to books, writers, and endless possibilities. Other teachers, like Gail Safaris, Melody Makopoulos, and Mr. Meidell, as well as Joyce Bickel, also helped point me in the right direction. In a quiet way, they have part ownership of every story I write. They helped me believe I could work in the same press box with Montville, Collins, and others. They helped give me the confidence that I could meet any challenge. They helped me embrace Eleanor Roosevelt's motto, "You can too." Never say you can't, because you can. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. Good luck to all of you as you continue on this wonderful journey called life.
Karen, having had the pleasure of working with you as a student, she deserves an extended applause, I agree. Karen, having had the pleasure of working with you as a student, I am not surprised by your sensitive and inspiring words to our class of '97. I now have the pleasure of presenting to you this diploma, making you an honorary member of this distinguished class of 1997. And now to introduce the valedictorian of the class of '97, I invite to the podium a young woman who has shared her academic talents and leadership skills both in the classroom and through various school and community service projects, Amanda Wagemaker.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I feel tremendously honored to be introducing the valedictorian of the class of 1997. I have known Pranav Anand for many years, and he is a friend that I value highly and with much esteem. One would think that Pranav is simply intellectual and perhaps elitist, but one would be tragically mistaken. He has so many different dimensions to share with everyone, and I say everyone because I mean it. Pranav has an uncanny ability to see value in each individual and to bring that talent to the surface. The lives that he touches are greatly enriched, not because he adds his knowledge, but because he draws out the knowledge that was already within oneself. This past semester, I took a philosophy course with Pranav at UMass Lowell. It gave me an opportunity to understand the essence of Pranav's knowledge. It was simply that he does not know everything, and he does not profess to know everything. He approaches an argument much like Socrates in the Republic of Plato. Rather than explaining what something is, Pranav shows you what it isn't. This approach allowed me to learn about myself without a feeling of inferiority, and that is why Pranav is so special. He can learn from others' strengths and from his own weaknesses. He does not limit his sources of knowledge. Rather, he takes equally from all who are willing to share their time with him. Overall, Pranav does not build walls around himself. Instead, he breaks them down to form new friendships and gain new experiences. What I'm trying to express is Pranav's limitlessness. He does not limit his knowledge or his abilities. He gives freely of himself, takes freely of others, and gives everything that is shared with equal standing. It is this unique quality that I admire the most about Pranav Anand. It is difficult to find people who admit their weaknesses but never give in to them. Pranav has constantly overcome his weaknesses and has become stronger because of them, not in spite of them. That is the reason why he's at the top of our class. Pranav's relentless thirst for knowledge is inspiring, and I will miss his witty repartee next year. However, I do not think that any one of us has heard the last of him. Whatever he chooses to excel in, he will share his success with the rest of the world. It is with great pleasure that I present Chelmsford High School's valedictorian of the class of 1997, Pranav Anand.
Good evening. Kishinev, Moldova, May 13th, 1997. In a surprising and daring escape, 7 inmates rushed to a fugitive freedom after weeks of hard labor. Flake by grueling flake, each holed up in an individual cell and armed only with a dining spoon. The 7 chip out a hole in the solid granite prison walls and escape. The formerly incarcerated thieves rush into the clean night air, leaving the prison guards on the other side of the wall to wonder how they missed the carefully concealed holes. Very well. What is the meaning of this anecdote? Am I making a metaphorical comparison between those prisoners escaping from a high-security penitentiary and us, graduating from our own granite prison, Chelmsford High School? Wait. Am I encouraging students to bring concealed spoons to supervise study? No. What fascinated me with this story was how it encapsulated 2 very serious points. That's the last few you'll hear from me. The virtue in action and the burden of responsibility. The most stunning feature of this tale is the very achievement therein. These men carved their way out of solid stone with dining spoons, with eating utensils. But what struck me more deeply is how each of these men must have felt about his freedom. He so desired to be free that he accomplished the incredible, the near impossible. He acted. I say acted with a capital A because these men acted in the true sense. They did not bow to their seemingly hopeless condition, a sterile, wasted life in a stifling cell. They seized control of their destinies. Surely each of these men could have stopped at any stage and accepted his fate like countless other fellow cellmates. He could have thrown down his twisted, mangled spoon from raw, bloody hands and like King Lear screamed at the gods for his destiny. But he didn't. Though it seemed the entire world opposed him, and though it seemed his struggle was in vain, he refused to accept the hand that had been dealt to him. He put his will against one so much more vast and so much more powerful than his own. This is true action. And here's where the metaphors begin. For we simple students graduating tonight really are like almost 400 inmates in a stony prison, a prison of our own in action. How many times has each of us not acted when we should have, not studied for a test when our grades were at stake, or not spoken our minds when our tongues just ached to be exercised? Too many to count, I would wager. Each refusal, yes, refusal to act, becomes just one more bolt slamming home in the prisons of our own making. We do not act. We choose not to act. And what is the product of our choice? The complacent life of a prisoner who says he wants freedom, but does not strive to get outside. It is then our duty to break free of these shackles. We must take up our spoons and turn against granite walls, no matter how imposing they might loom. We must act. For if today's philosophers and scientists are right, our actions are all we have, all that differentiate us from the countless particles whirling around us. Our actions define our humanity. Each day that we consciously choose to get out of bed and venture forth into the world is a day we affirm that we exist as individual beings with individual ideas, expressions, loves, experiences, and fears. Our democracy, the very affirmation of individuality, is fueled only by active citizens, people not willing, but enthusiastic to express themselves as loudly or harshly as they wish. Too many people today complain that they are powerless to change the system. And indeed, they are. For these people, these complacent prisoners, talk about action, but never twitch a muscle. What these people do not understand is that they are part of the system. If they do not move, it's no wonder the system remains unchanged. If we want a different world, we cannot hope for change. We must make it. Thus, an actor does not have to be a mover or shaker, or Bill Gates, or President Clinton. An actor is simply a person who refuses to accept the stagnant status quo. He or she may be a civil rights advocate, or a bank president, a philosopher, or a carpenter. In the final tally, the actor's success is not measured by how many yachts he owns, how much clout he can wave around, or how many adorers he has. No, a successful person is one who does not put down that dining spoon for fear of failure or punishment. A person who reaches for the still invisible stars which sparkle beyond granite walls. It is then the virtue of a successful actor that he does not listen to the naysaying prisoners. He knows that there is nothing that he cannot do, and he proves it every time he succeeds. Perhaps the best example of such actors can be found right here, in our teachers. These are people who have given their lives to making ours. Too often, they are told that we are a hopeless, disrespectful mob, impossible to educate. But our teachers continue to act unfazed because they are firm in their beliefs. With their little spoons, they whittle away our brashness, our clouded ignorance, our granite stubborn will. And they continue in a task many call hopeless because they know that it is not. Indeed, they're actors perhaps as powerful as a president or a multi-billionaire software mogul. For teachers truly have the weight of the world on their shoulders, the weight of the future world. Their actions ramify past their own lives and through us into the future. A heavy responsibility. However, though they constantly feel the burden of the future pressed down upon them, they continue to teach, to act without hesitation. They refuse to be shackled into inaction by chains of fear. In this drive to action, our teachers send us the same message those Moldovans do. Only action can bring freedom and meaning to life. But there's a great difference between these two messengers. Our teachers understand the weight of their actions bring, but the Moldovan thieves did not. Again, we must look at the heart of the thieves' story. Though these men acted and took control of their lives, they were blind to what they were doing. For in affirming that they could act as individuals, they affirmed something else: individual responsibility. If we have complete and total control over our actions, then there is no other person to level the blame upon. If we seize our own lives and make our own destinies, then we individually are answerable for our actions. Like so many in this pass-the-buck world culture, the Moldovan prisoners broke out of jail without acknowledging why they were there in the first place. They had stolen. They had acted. Now, in jail, they were answering. Ironically, when they escaped, the thieves understood their duty as individuals to act, but not their likewise duty to responsibility. By their actions, they had violated the law. Instead of accepting their rightful punishment, they again broke the law. They refused to be accountable. And in that, they are symbols of many actors today. People who truly do make conscious choices, but then refuse to listen to their own conscience. It is a never-ending culture of blame, from murderers who blame racial, economic, and cultural society, to careless drivers who blame the other driver for an accident. Though our society has grown more aware of the power of the individual, somewhere along the way, we lost our ability to say two very simple words: I'm sorry. And thus, my cry to our class is to rise to action's call. We have lived nearly 2 decades in the shadow of parents, teachers, and advisors. We have been sheltered, but our momentous time is now. As we finally leave the parental roost, we will be faced with a dazzling array of choices. It is our duty not to become entrapped in indecision or fear. True, for many of our decisions, we won't know all that we should. There's no conceivable way of knowing everything about any issue, let alone all issues. This is mankind's great curse. Though we do not know where every choice will take us, we must act. If not, we risk being nothing more than biological machines. We cannot wait for our dreams to come down to us. If they lie in the clouds, I say build the tallest spire you can. At least that way, you're approaching your dream. Each and every one of us is gifted with that curse of free will. Gifted with the curse? Yes. Because though we must act, we can act in whatsoever direction we choose. Unlike those prisoners, our freedom is more easily won. We walk up a stage, shake a few hands, pick up a diploma, and start a new era in our lives. But with this new era comes an unprecedented weight of responsibility. Everything we do from here on will lie upon our shoulders. We will finally enter that far-off world we heard of before, the world of cause and effect. Our free will gives us the ability to literally do anything we want. Like the Moldovan thieves, we can lie, cheat, steal, and kill. But we must be prepared to accept the consequences. For if we do not accept our individual responsibility, we must lose the flip side, our own free will. And with that, we will lose all that defines us as people, all that makes us greater than the prisoners of inaction. We will become soulless machines, mindless bodies, diffusive particles. We will become nothing. It has been said, a privilege is not known until a person loses it. Let us not learn to value our free will only after we have lost it. Let us not lose that visionary urge, that most wondrous gift within all of us. Let us move forward. Let us act. Thank you.
And now you know why I'm so proud of this class. Our school continue to offer the best opportunities for all students to not only reach their graduation day, but to be prepared to enter the world of tomorrow. Providing the best educational program for the future involves difficult decisions and the continued efforts to provide open communication among all members of our community. This crucial process is the foundation of public education. Public education continues to be the cornerstone of our American democracy. In Chelmsford, we are fortunate to have a school committee who is dedicated to providing the best that public education can offer. I now ask you to give a warm welcome to the chairperson of our school committee, Mr. Angelo Taranto.
Thank you. Class of 97, Dr. Moser, Karen, Mr. Meidell, Mrs. Temple, faculty, parents, and friends. It is with great pleasure and pride that I congratulate you, the class of 1997, on behalf of the Chelmsford School Committee. We are proud of you. You are about to begin another phase in your life where you will be preparing for your future endeavors and making those important connections in life. I want to thank you for continuing the Chelmsford High School tradition, which has kept this school the best in the state. This tradition that you have kept is your high achievements, academically, athletically, and most of all, your outstanding community involvement. You have certainly demonstrated the Chelmsford pride, and you have given much back to your community. And now the time has come to say goodbye to all the friends that you know. Best wishes as you go your way, and may all your dreams come true. As you travel down life's roadway, but I ask one thing or two. Please remember us as we will remember you, and we will be there for you. We wish you a future filled with new challenges, new discoveries, and much happiness and success. Congratulations and best wishes.
To emphasize the importance of parents and the achievements symbolized by a diploma from Chelmsford High School, each year we ask a member of the executive board of our high school PTO to assist in handing out the diplomas. This year, President of the Chelmsford High School PTO, Mrs. Denise Temple, will be assisting. And now, the moment you have all been patiently waiting for. The conferring of your diplomas.
Hello.
Julie Ann Baer. Sarah Elizabeth Boschman. Arletta Lynn Belleville. Rebecca Bromberg. Kimberly Ann Brooks. Janelle Arlene Bryan. Courtney Mary Campbell. Fonda Chen. Linda Chen. Marina Chun. Christy Denise Ducharme. Rachel Ann Edwards. Sherry Toby Furman. Jara Nicole Finnegan. Sarah Caroline Flynn. Jessica Lacey Frazier. Harpreet Kaur Gandhi. Jody Rebecca Gilfeather. Tracy Elizabeth Gilkerson. Elizabeth Ann Gulas. Katie Lee Hibbard. Michelle Lynn Hibbard. Jennifer Hill. Kimberly Ann Hobbs. Jessica Lee Hosman. Jody Ann Jordan. Christina Ann Joyner. Nicole Therese Kelly. Holly Corinne Kopaz. Brooke Mendy Kotpala. Hemaleka Krishnan. Jennifer Ann Landers. Danielle Doffler-Luce. Hillary Alexandra Mason. Kate Jean McKenna. Nora Carol Meenan. Janet Louise Milley. Beth Christine Maloney. Katie Lynn Morrison. Patricia Martinez. Susan Ann Mumby. Megan Gale Nichols. Allison Beth McConchuk. Taryn Lee O'Brien. Katie Ann O'Connor. Rachel Mary O'Reilly. Megan Kathleen O'Sullivan. Laura Jane Pincani. Jody Lynn Paquin. Sandra Marie Picard. Shannon Megan Pollard. Amy Rebecca Rager. Leanne Rivard. Sarah Caitlin Roque. Jacqueline Naomi Smith. Megan Beth Stanton. Jennifer Kim Sutkus. Erica Lynn Temple. Heather Renee Teray. Sarah Margaret Wilson. Sarah Diane Wright. Marissa Lynn Zeziger. Deborah Ann Adler. Michelle Lynn Anderson. Christina Louise Baker. Stavrula Bletsis. Elaine Lynn Baroda. Crystal Therese Bowen. Christina Marie Cantrell. Lauren Elizabeth Camo. Leanne Daigneault. Jennifer Janet DeJesus. Bethann DeStefano. Arlene Marie Dixon. Christine Julia Duggan. Courtney Lee Faulds. Margaret Edith Feeney. Rachel Susanna Ferner. Melissa Estelle Fournier. Laura Elizabeth Gamache. Melanie Ann Gano. Laura Leanne Garrigan. Gabrielle Ann Goudreau. Tony Michelle Grasso. Tara Elizabeth Hajar. Bonnie Lisa Harrington. Jennifer Lynn Harrington. Tanya Lee Heron. Vivian Chekwaisu. Elizabeth Walker Keene. Meredith Louise Kiernan. Jean Marie Larson. Kathleen Marie Lewis. Jennifer Ann Maggio. Ruth Ann Martin. Maura Bridget McMahon. Amy Lynn McMullen. Erica DeRubis Meidell. Laura Ellen Melanson. Dacia Ivelisse Morel. Rebecca Ann Morse. Elizabeth Kelly Moy. Kimberly Ann Nakamoto. Melissa Jean Nickerson. Chantel Rebecca Willett. Alana Lynn Pappas. Valerie Ann Perry. Nicole Karen Faniff. Kimberly Marie Prue. Anjali Ramachandra. Christy Lynn Ribel. Jennifer Mary Sabalauskis. Diana Elena Sachs. Melissa Ann Silk. Carolyn Sahigian. Sharon Eileen Souza. Stacy Lynn Sullivan. Rachel Lisa Terrace. Jamie Elizabeth Dusignant. Helen Carol Tucker. Jennifer Marie Turco. Deborah Lee Turner. Amanda Leslie Wagemaker. Erin Renee Walsh. April Nicole Watts. Meredith Ann White. Danielle Marie Winson. Christy Michelle Wilson. Allison Michelle Wong. Trisha Ann Willard. Sarah Jane Ames. Mary Lee Barrett. Stacy Ashley Boschman. Karen Marie Bell. Carolyn Marie Bleck. Sarah Frances Bowen. Crystalline Joy Brody. Carrie Lee Brooks. Cynthia Pierce Brown. Amy Ruth Bunn. Susan Gardner Chipman. Abigail Ann Connor. Erica Lee Darling. Laura Ann Domi. Trisha Lee Ellis. Kelly Ann Farr. Jessica Lee Fielding. Nicole Cavalier Flynn. Carrie Ann Gardner. Melissa Susan Jelinas. Carrie Ann Gilbride. Mary Catherine Gill. Pauline Mae Goldsmith Johnson. Kristen Dorothy Gould. Kristen Lee Hansen. Jennifer Ellen Hardy. Betty Aginian. Kristen Elizabeth Horndal. Anna Isaac Ross. Tamara Eliza Jeknavorian. Andrea Nicole Cluck. Lauren Michelle McKenzie. Rebecca Ann Mahoney. Megan Brooke Mamelis. Carla Jean Merengue. Jennifer Ann McEwen. Emily Fiddler Maloney. Colleen Elizabeth Mulrooney. Jennifer Wells Murray. Kristen Lynn Oft. Maria Gina Papandreou. Jill Michelle Phillips. Christina Marie Rude. Angela Marie Rigg. Sarah Ellen Rose. Victoria Marie Scarmeas. Hillary Beth Silva. Jennifer Lynn Syme. Michelle Lee Small. Danielle Stott. Kathleen Ann Sullivan. Rachel Lynn Taylor. Jillian Terushko. Melissa Caitlin Tumanello. Whitney Rachel Ward. Cara Alicia Whitworth. Sarah Elizabeth Wilkinson. Kara Ann Wilson. Yuan Shu. William Kent Allen. Pranav Anand. Justin McGuirk Benoit. Garen James Bogosian. Michael David Kerrigan. Scott Lambert Carter. Andrew Alex Chiris. Joshua Paul Clancy. John Philip Clark. Adam Joseph Costa. Carl Thomas DeVincent. Adam John DeYoung. Louis Andre DiStasi Jr. Daniel Michael Ellingson. Christian Adams Hardick. Huey Four Evans. Michael Nolan Freeman. John Robert Goffin. Ethan Allen Gray. Vikram Ramesh Hegde. Matthew Scott Hilson. Christopher Peter Johnson. Paul Mark Johnson. Benjamin Adam Jahula. Anastasius George Kastronakis. David Ferris Catan. Joseph Aaron Kelber. Robert Edward Colleen. Michael William Labonte. James Peter Maravillas. Gareth Francis Markey. Jonathan David Martin. Andrew Joseph McCabe. William Edward McCarthy Jr. Michael Paul Muse. Christopher James Peterson. Douglas Gary Patullo. Richard Robert Price. Kevin Bernard Reddy. Kevin Michael Reeves. David Anthony Robinson. Keith William Rondeau. Edmund Anthony Rue. Michael Dana Ryan. Anthony John Sylvia. Kevin Sinowski. Youngjin So. Jason Suhu. David Ignatius Walsh. Douglas Burton Welch. Mark Paul Hooley. Kevin Chi-Kung Yang. Michael Stephen Young. Anthony Joseph Zani. Samuel Gregory Arnold. Michael Robert Bertolami. Aaron Edward Brooks. Martin Arthur Brown. Brian Burns. Zbigniew Butkowitz. Thomas James Callery. Brian Joseph Carnes. Andrew Dana Klein. Stephen John Caraccio. Brian Lee Kuchu. Matthew John Crawford. Keith James Cruikshank. Paul Francis Doherty. Timothy Barry Dolan. Apostolos Exarchos. Michael Sean Finnegan. Jamie Dean Gendron. Sean Peter Goulet. Kevin Michael Hinckley. Matthew Paul Hoffman. Jeffrey Christopher Jenkins Jr. Brad John Kelly. David Arthur Kirk. Kyle Raymond Kidd. Paul Richard Langworthy. John Richard Learson. John Brian Leonard. Andrew James Lacapo. Craig Joseph McKenzie. Matthew Howard Nelson. Carl Eric Olson. Valentine Frederick Pazier. David Michael Pascucci. William Andrew Patterson. Thomas Stephen Peel. Adam Joseph Peroni. Kurt Dwight Robinson. Jason Edward Rowe. Brent Edward Rossell. Matthew Edmund Sager. James Michael Sanford. Andrew Allen Small. Jonathan Michael Steinman. Matthew Michael Storis. Christopher Clark Stubbs. Sean Patrick Sweeney. Gregory Mark Troughton. Charles Peter Chickless. Peter Stanley Urban. Stephen Patrick Woodbury. Stephen Allen Wright. Keith Michael O'Coin. John Benjamin Bates. Scott James Bavis. Christopher Michael Boucher. Michael Joseph Carignan. Jeremy William Clark. Donald Edmund Coates Jr. Jason Patrick Collins. Timothy Francis Cormier. Bruce Lee Kuchu. Matthew James Cullen. Jarrett Bay. Andrew Allen Galpin. John Taylor Gates. Jeffrey Joseph Haru. Mark Thomas Hogan. Alex Kelly. Matthew John Killam. Russell Ryan Kimball. Michael Henry Koreski. Jeffrey Paul Lake. Alexander Lehman. Adam Russell Lewis. Matthew Lawrence Liakas. Brian Thomas Macarel. Arjun Vijay Masurkar. Christopher Michael Medeiros. Brian Richard Molinari. William Raymond Mueller. Brian Paul Michael. Jeffrey Charles Needles. Christopher Scott Arau. Justin Armando Peroni. John Eldon Rollins. Jacob Peter Sartz. Carlos Rudy Stoltzman. John Sterling Stubblefield. Matthew James Tevlin. Brendan Liam Trainer. Charles Walter Saravasilis. Matthew Mian Turco. Matthew James Taimula. John Robert Villeneuve. Nathaniel Alden Martin Whiting. Christopher Philip Wu. And the president of the class of 1997, David Michael Anderson.
Class of 1997, please stand. You may now turn your tassels.
It is my pleasure and honor to present to you the graduates of Chelmsford High School's class of 1997. Please allow the recessional party to leave the stage by not blocking the aisles, and everyone have a wonderful, memorable day. Thank you.